For myself, as a traditional Catholic, as a theologian, as someone who kind of spends a lot of time in that online space, I have been noticing a really disturbing trend online where people who call themselves traditional, they're not really traditional, but people who call themselves kind of trad are really advocating for this consuming form of motherhood, right? Where it's like, it's only a few years, your kids are only young once, right? Don't worry about doing anything for yourself because this is what's best for your family. This is what's best for your children. And I've seen this kind of rage its head full force online, and people are even judging moms for wanting to work part-time or have be away from their kids for any amount of time. There was a woman who was doing the podcast rounds saying no one else should be watching your kids before the child is 3, right? So for 3 years, you need to be the only person with your children if you can. And if not, it needs to be one other allo parent for perhaps 1 hour a day max, right? And it was just creating these expectations for moms to really just become engrossed in this all-consuming motherhood. And I am really concerned about what that is going to do to this kind of next generation of mothers who, I can definitely see how we went way too far in the 70s with like sending women to work and sending kids to daycare. And, the way that the kind of second wave suffragists said, like, you owe it to your foremothers to go to work and get out there. I can totally see how that went too far. But I also wonder if the pendulum is swinging way too far in the other direction, where now women are being shamed for wanting to do anything else, right? For wanting to have any hobbies, anything for themselves, right? And I will say that speaking for myself, most of the people who really advocate for this like hyper traditional view, which again is not super really traditional, but I'll use their language, this hyper traditional form and view of motherhood. Most of them were raised by like single moms or came from broken homes. And so for them, that's what was missing, right? That was their ideal. For me, I was the oldest of a large family. I am one of four. I had a stay-at-home mom, for pretty much my entire childhood. I grew up in this very traditional family. And I will say that growing up in that environment, my mom taught me so much about what it means to be a great mother and prioritizing your family. And she was truly an amazing mom, truly. However, I watched her suffer. Like, I watched her be extremely frustrated that her gifts and her talents were not being recognized in the world. My dad was a doctor, and so everyone was super impressed with him. But so I think that there is a generation of women, in particular, again, going back to this millennial conversation, like we watched our mothers, for those of us who came from these traditional stay-at-home environments, we watched our mothers in many ways suffer from a lack of recognition, a lack of friendships, a lack of intellectual stimulation. And you went to hobbies. Like when you were looking to get out of your mental health crisis, you went to hobbies. You went to things that were creative, that were just for you. Can you talk a little bit about what does having things that are just for you, what does that alone time, what does that, like, yes, I am a mother and that is the absolute priority in my life, but I also am a human being. And what does that setting aside time and carving out that time, what does that look like and what role does that play postpartum and when it comes to women's mental health?
This is beautiful, Janelle, all of this. And I think you said everything so perfectly about the pendulum swinging, and we're going to the next phase, which is going to be traumatic in and of itself. Like there's never, um, a one way or the other. There's always a healthy blend, right? When I always hear like the most controversial topics ever, there's never both sides are wrong, right? It's somewhere in the middle, and this is exactly where I found myself, and I found myself wondering, who am I? That was the big question, because I know that I was a mom, but there's so much more to life than just being a mom. Not to say that being a mom isn't everything. It is so much of who I am. First and foremost, I'm a wife and I am a mother. Like that is so much to me. And I create. That's what I do. I create human beings. I create quilts. I create a home. I create meals. I create all the time. That's what I do. And I love to create things that are nourishing. I love to create things that are beautiful, like my children. I love to create things that feel good. And so, finding something, and that's usually what we do as women when we say, I got to go find myself and I got to pick up a hobby because I got to go create something. I have to have this outlet. I have to go create. I have to go use my hands because that is what I do. And I think that's the trad wife kind of thing is like it's all about creation, right? I'm going to go take this home that my husband has provided and or this house and I'm going to make it a home. And I'm going to take this food and I'm going to make it a meal, right? And that's what, I'm going to take these children, I'm going to raise them to be these beautiful adults that are so kind and understanding and maybe know another language, whatever it is that you decide is important to you. And you create that in your life. And for me, it was very much of like, okay, who am I? And what is it that I want to create where? And I knew that intrinsically, I think, and cultures around the world, that's what they do. That's how they practice. Like there's no such thing, if we look back in other cultures around the world 100 years ago, there's no counselors, there's no therapists, and many of them still don't use that. It's what do you create and what do you give to your community? How do you belong into your community? How are you valuable to your community? And oftentimes that means how do I create? How do I grow? How do I fit in this space? And there's so many different ways in which we can do that. And oftentimes we have to find ourselves as human beings. Because, if you get too lost into the motherhood, I mean, eventually your kids are going to leave.
Mhm.
They're going to go off to college. They're going to go be grown adults. They're going to have their own families. And the last thing you want to do is be that mom who can't let go. That would be the death of you, really. And we watch it. We've seen it. We know exactly what that looks like because we know mothers who have seen it. We have mother-in-laws who will do it, right? Like we know what it feels like, and we don't want to be those people. And if we make our children the only thing in our lives, yes, of course they're the number one or number two priority. However, God, husband, children, whatever it is for you, and like where they show up in priorities. But the next is yourself, right? And how that fits. And I put myself much higher on that list. It's me after God, and then my husband and my children, and me only because if I don't put me up there, the everybody else is going to suffer. I am so much more of a present mother and a present wife and a happy mother when I get to have me time, when I feel full in myself, and when my health and well being is taken care of mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually. If that's not taken care of, everybody else is going to pay the price because really mothers are the center of their home, right? In the traditional sense, if we are going to follow that everything that you were saying about traditional housewives, that is the thing. Like, and we know this, right? Our dog, if we have animals, they're following us around the house. Our children follow us around the house. Our husband saying, honey, where can I find this? What do I do with this? You're the center because you're the knowledge base. You carry the energy of your entire home.
Yes.
Everything revolves around the mother. You
Mhm.
are the creatress. You are everything. You are, and in my belief, the what brings God into the home. You are the human being that creates. You create human life, right? And you are so divinely connected. Make yourself a priority so that you can give even more to the people that you love in your life.
I love your reframe of I need to be nourished before I can nourish others. And I think that that is so embodied and so evident in the creation of a human being, right? Like a malnourished mother cannot create life, right? And I love how you brought in even that sacred aspect of like you're right, like we are the ones who turned, the love between ourselves and our husbands into a family, right? Like we brought these children into the world and turned this house into a home. And I don't want to be misunderstood in that I don't think that that is absolutely sacred and the most important thing that I do. I think we both agree that the most important roles that we play in our lives are that of a wife and mother, right? And the creation of the home. With that being said, how are we showing up for our children? How are we showing up for our husbands and our community? Are we showing up nourished or are we showing up empty? Right? And I think for a lot of us, we know what it was like to be parented by a mother who was showing up nourished versus a mother who was showing up empty, right? And we know the difference. We know how that feels. And I'm just so grateful to you, Miranda, for the work that you're doing. It's so, it's about postpartum, but it just it lays the foundation for motherhood, which reverberates throughout every aspect of our lives, as we've seen throughout this conversation. We've gone on so many bunny trails.